You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the Interactive Interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com. Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Joining us on the Newsmaker right now is the NWA Women's Champion. She is the Brickhouse, Kamille. Are you with me, ma'am?
Yes, how are you?
It's such a pleasure to have you on. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Same. Can't complain.
All right. Well, it is a pleasure to have you on. And, of course, the occasion that we're having you on to talk about is just a few weeks away now. In fact, about 10 days away to be exact, and that's NWA Hard Times 3. What is your thoughts heading into the big mega event?
I'm super excited. It's our first time in New Orleans, so just that fact alone I'm excited about, to have a whole new group of fans that may not have been able to come out to a live show before. And obviously we're also partnering with Wildcat Sports, so they have a bit of a fan base already. So maybe some, new fans that are just fans of Wildcat Sports will be able to check out the NWA as well. So I'm just excited to get some new eyes on the product and everybody having a good time.
Absolutely. And, of course, your match, you'll be defending in a three-way match, definitely not to the champion's advantage. It's going to be you against Kilynn King and, of course, Chelsea Green, who cashed in her championship series cash-in opportunity for this match. So what is your thoughts on facing two girls at the same time, two women at the same time?
It won't be the first time I've done this. I had a lot at Crockett Cup. I had to go against Kylie and Chelsea again. So although I am at a little bit more of a disadvantage with it being the fact that I don't have to even be pinned to lose the title, which I think is BS for a title match. I have experience in there before, so I just have to do whatever it takes to be the one doing the pinning and come out still champion.
Very good. And I'm introduced you as the NWA Women's Champion. That still has got to mean a lot to you, even just to hear that still. It's been a long time, though. You're the champion for so long that now people look at your matches and are like, well, she's held it so long. At some point, she's going to slip on a banana peel and lose the title. Does that weigh on your mind going into these matches that people kind of are thinking, well, she's had it for a while. It might be time that it goes elsewhere?
No, it doesn't weigh on me at all. I think that if anything, the longer that I've had the title, the more confident I get with it, the more confident I get in my skills, figuring out different types of opponents. And so to me, the more days under my belt, the even better. This is wrestling. It's not something where I personally don't believe that time, length of time, if someone has had it for a certain amount of time, that it means, okay, now it's time for them to give it up or somebody else have a turn. I think that's very silly. I think that's a silly thing. So, no, I believe in long legacies, and I'm creating one.
Yeah, 17 months as world champion. That's pretty impressive.
Yep.
All right. So I introduced you as well as the Brickhouse, and, of course, you don't look just like anybody else. You have your own unique look. You definitely are a star. You stand out in the crowd for sure. When did the interest in fitness and getting this physique that is so impressive come about in your life?
Well, I've always played sports my whole life growing up. However, that doesn't necessarily, go into an aesthetically pleasing physique. In college, I played Division I softball, and that was more of a functional lifting type of thing. So it didn't really matter. There was girls on there that could, if you're hitting home runs, no one cares if you're 300 pounds or how you look. You know what I mean? So it was getting out of finally playing sports in that sort of way into wrestling, which is still, a sport in itself, but it also has to do with how you look, just appearance-wise. And so I kind of discovered bodybuilding and how you can shape your body into a certain way, and that's how I got into it. Because, like I said, I've always been into sports. I've always been an athlete, but I wanted to also look the part as well. Because, you watch certain boxers and stuff out there, that are knocking people out, and they're the ones you might not expect because they don't look a certain way, right?
Right.
In wrestling, I think it helps to look a certain way and then be able to perform on top of that.
I agree. I completely agree. So your story in wrestling is a little different than most because when you really hit the national platform, you had already announced that you were thinking of retiring. So it kind of was almost like accidental way that you came across, and people thought, well, is she going to wrestle because now she's the enforcer behind Nick Aldis? What made you decide that you were thinking about stepping away from the wrestling business, and what brought you back in?
Yeah, so I had stepped away from the wrestling business. I thought that I was done with it, just because wrestling, like I said, I've always played sports, and that team camaraderie, if you will, everybody kind of, although it's competitive within, certain positions and stuff like that, at the end of the day, you're a team. So that's what I was used to. And then I got into wrestling and realized there's a lot of politics and a lot of BS and people just in it for themselves. And I really wasn't a fan of that. So I stepped away for a while and I thought I was done. But I started to miss it. I did. I can't say, that I didn't miss it. And then
Got in your blood, huh?
Yeah, and then I got a message from David Lagana, who was helping out under Billy at the time, and he always had his eye out for new talent and stuff, and he was just like, hey, are you really done? And like I said, I was missing it, so I just said, what do you got for me? And he explained the role, and I thought that it was actually a great role to kind of just dip my toe back into the business because I wouldn't be wrestling, and we also didn't know if it was going to go anywhere past NWA 70. It could have just been a one-off for that night. Like we had no idea what was going to happen with it, And so it was a good way to dip my toe back in the water. And then once we realized that dynamic was a pretty cool thing, me and Nick, we kept going with it. And even then, still didn't know if I was going to wrestle. And one day, Billy, he just said, hey, we want to invest in you as a wrestler. And this was probably like a year or so into just being Nick's insurance policy. So then I started kind of retraining and getting my feet wet in the ring again, and now we're here.
That's awesome. And you mentioned Nick Aldis. You were paired with him. And what was it like to be paired with the guy who carried the 10 pounds of gold and, of course, his wealth of knowledge? People don't realize it, but he's a longtime veteran now. We think of him as a young guy, but he's a veteran. He's been everywhere.
Yeah, so it was great to be under, his learning tree, if you will, just as far as how to put together matches and how to carry yourself as a champion and the ins and outs of this, not only inside the ring, but like the business aspect of it. So I got to learn a ton from Nick, and then obviously through him I met my husband, so very grateful for that as well.
Absolutely. By the way, congratulations. I know it's a little bit belated, but congratulations on the All right. So you already kind of covered it, but was it a hard decision when they said, I want to invest in you as a wrestler after you had said that you were retired from the ring to decide, I'm going to get back in there? Was it a hard decision to do that?
Well, one, it wasn't a hard decision because if I wanted to keep getting paid, I was going to do as they and then, but no, in all honesty, it was getting to the point where it was kind of hard to just be on the outside of the ring. It's kind of like someone, if they've played sports, a certain sport their whole life, and then they become just a spectator. It's kind of like, dang, I wish I could get in there and do it, So I was actually pretty excited when he said that, but obviously nervous as well because it is, nothing against valets or managers or anything like that. But as someone who has done both, there's a lot more pressure when you are the one wrestling. So it was, kind of, all right, time to level up and figure out how to do this part of my career now and step up into that role that they wanted me to fill.
So in the 21st century, unfortunately, we have a thing called Google. So when you were not talking, people could still Google and kind of figure out who is this person that's playing Kamille or that is Kamille? Who is she? But on screen, if we were taking it just on face value, watching the show, there was a real big mystique about, what makes you tick based simply on the fact that you wouldn't speak. And it was such a simple thing, but such an awesome thing. Did you enjoy playing the more, I don't want to say stoic, but definitely silent sidekick there?
I enjoyed it for probably the first year, just because it was, mysterious and there's something cool about it and no one knew what was up with it. But after that, I got to the point where it was the same thing with the wrestling. It was like, I can actually cut a promo better than most girls. I can talk better than most girls. I can,
I agree.
So the fact that the fact that I couldn't showcase that. And then, I, of course, would read the little comments like, oh, well, they probably have her doing that because she can't talk. And I was just like, ugh, that's so annoying. So it did get to a point where I was like, I can't wait to show myself and like kind of unveil this layer, to peel back these layers.
Awesome.
But then I started talking, and people were so disappointed that I wasn't like Russian or English. I was like, oh my God, sorry for being Southern. So sorry for big Southern guys. But I think that was another thing. It was like hard for people to get used because they expected me to sound a certain way, and it was like, oh, she doesn't. So then that like freaked people out. But now we're past that point, and we're so deep into me like talking now that I think it was just a matter of like people getting used to it.
Very good. And we talked about your stepping back into the ring and then capturing the NWA title, but the match was actually against Serena Deeb when you actually did capture the world title. What did that mean to you that night, and being trusted with the prestigious championship that has roots that go back almost 100 years?
It was a ton of pressure. I definitely can't say that I wasn't extremely nervous, and not just nervous for the match itself, but nervous for like what that meant, that I was now going to be a champion and have to carry myself as a champion and have championship quality matches. I mean, as someone that took so long off of wrestling, and then I had only had, I think, maybe 4 matches with the NWA before I became the champion. So I was kind of just nervous, like, is this really something that I'm ready for, But luckily, I got to do it with Serena, who's just the ultimate professional and so knowledgeable and just an amazing person, as a wrestler and as a human being. And so that was something, like, I'm so happy that it happened with her, that's something that I'll always remember for the rest of my life. And then, the next defense was against Layla Hirsch. And
NWA EmPowerrr.
Yeah, and that was that's always a huge match that sticks out for me. And people ask me, what's one of your favorite matches? I'll always go back to that one because, like I previously stated, I wasn't sure if I was ready to be a champion. And that match, that night, it just proved to me, like, you are ready for this, you can do it, and it gave me so much confidence. So that's another, like, really special moment in my career.
Absolutely, I agree, and that was a great match, and that was a great night. I actually helped promote that with Mickie James. I had her on to talk about EmPowerrr before it happened, and watching the show from home, there was obviously just so much emotion from the female roster that showed on the screen because you guys were doing it. You had your own exclusive show. What was the vibe like both backstage and in the arena that you guys were trusted with such a huge night? And by the way, that night was also better than the following night's show, which featured both men and women. The vibe was much better the first night.
I agree with the vibe. Even just out there performing, I had more fun the first night, and that has nothing to do with my opponent or anything like that. But like you said, vibe, like the energy was so incredible that first night. And backstage, it was because I'll be honest, I've always been a tomboy, so I'm not a person that likes being surrounded by like a ton of girls. So I didn't know how it would be, but it was great. Like, everyone was just super there for each other. Everyone like wanted each other to have a great time and a great match, and it was a really, really, really special evening for sure.
So here's where I name drop a little. I already did with Mickie, but I had Tyrus on a few months ago, and he was talking about he thinks the NWA needs to find a way onto traditional television. He thinks that should be the next logical step towards growing the brand. What do you think the next logical step is, and do you think that is something that the NWA should be considering, trying to get on terrestrial television?
I agree with him because it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's just the fact, because to me, more people watch YouTube and streaming services and stuff like that than even just traditional cable television. But there is something like prestigious about being on cable television, and that almost is like you've made it, as far as a company. So I think that is something that we need to strive to do. But this is a company that's ran by Billy and Billy only right now. Like, he's in charge of everything. So I think in order to do that, we would have to be comfortable delegating, having a bigger like office, if you will, and being able to delegate certain things. Because right now we are a very, very like tightly knit family and ran thing, and if we moved to TV, that structure would change a little bit. So it would be very interesting to see how that would happen and if it would still be the same. Because like that's something that I love about the company I work for, is that we are like a family. So it'd be interesting to see if we could still keep that family dynamic, if we made it onto national television.
That would be awesome. Absolutely. You've appeared on AEW Dynamite. Billy Corgan recently was saying that he'd love to partner with AEW or WWE in some ways to help develop younger talent as well. What is your thoughts on Billy thinking that, there might be a chance to work with these two companies that are the two juggernauts right now?
I think the landscape of wrestling right now, there is opportunities for companies to work together. So I definitely don't think that's something that can't happen. As far as like people coming in and out, I like having like a set roster, because then you know who does what and what their position is, and you get to know people like on a really close basis. So I think that would disrupt that a bit, but I do think that it would be good for getting new eyes and growing the NWA as a whole. So I'm not really like super for it. I'm not super against it. I kind of feel neutral because of the pros and cons for it. But hey, like I said earlier, I just do my job. So whatever they say goes, and I'm definitely open to it.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to ask you for your predictions on two matches coming up in here at Hard Times 3. Of course, one of them is your match. I don't think it's going to take a rocket scientist to figure out the prediction, but who comes out with the NWA Women's World title?
And still, your NWA Women's World Champion, Kamille.
Perfect. And, of course, the other one, I mentioned Tyrus, but he's also going to be in the main event. He's going to be in there as well with Trevor Murdoch challenging for the world title, and gosh, I think it was Matt Cardona, though the name escapes me. Okay, who's going to walk out with the NWA male world title?
Yeah, that's a tough one because, once again, it is a triple threat, so anything can happen. I think Matt really wants to get that title just because he never really lost it in the first place. So he has a big chip on his shoulder there, so he has an advantage in that way. But Tyrus has an advantage that it's New Orleans, his hometown, so he has a lot of people behind him. And then Trevor has the advantage that he is the current champion, so he knows what it takes to win and be a champion. So that's a really tough one, but I'm going to go with Tyrus just because it's in his hometown.
That sounds great. All right. Well, I promised I wouldn't keep you too long. I want to thank you for coming on and doing this. Do you have one last thing you want to plug or any last words for those maybe on the fence if they're going to spend the money for Hard Times?
Definitely. If you guys cannot make it out there live, which of course we would love to have you there live, make sure you go to Fight TV to order the pay-per-view. It's going to be a great time. There's a lot of mix-up of matches. I mean, they just announced like Maxine Paler versus Natalya in a casket match. So how often do you get to see a casket match? So buy pay-per-view just if you want to be entertained for the night. It'll be a good show for sure. All
right. And before I let you go, do you mind if I ask for one last favor from you?
Maybe. Let's see what it is.
Well, it's just for a station ID saying this is Kamille and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
The Wrestling Epicenter?
Epicenter. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I can do that. Tell me when.
All right. We'll do 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, everybody, this is the Brickhouse, Kamille, your NWA Women's World Champion, and you are listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
Perfect. First take. You nailed it. I appreciate your time today, by the way. That was great. I hope I didn't take up too much of yours.
Nope, it was good, so I appreciate that.
All right, I'll let you know when I get this up online. I'll send it out to, your 411 Manias and so on and so forth, and people will read it if they don't listen to it, and they'll listen to it if they don't read it.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thank you. Good luck with your next one, and thank you again.
Yep, thank you.
This is Interactive Wrestling Radio.
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 For Rush. Featuring the interactive interview.
Interactive interview.
Interactive interview.
Interactive interview.
Interactive
interview. Interactive interview.
Interactive interview, oh yeah! Formerly The Blaze.
The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze.
The Blaze.
The Blaze.
The Blaze.
The Blaze. The Blaze. The Blaze rock.
Yo, Maniacs, so what you gonna do when a Blaze of Maniacs runs wild on you?
On WrestlingEpicenter.com.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling
Epicenter. Wrestling
Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. The Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
And now we shamelessly name drop from our history.
The Wrestling Epicenter would like to apologize for the following.
All right, everybody.
Viva la raza.
Viva la raza.
Hey, y'all.
Hello, ladies.
Hey guys, we had a lovely conversation.
First lady.
Absolutely. Oh, look at me. She's so kooky.
Be there. Where else?
Interactive
Wrestling Radio.
Wrestling.
Epicenter.
Oh my god, you win! Wow, being interactive.
Whoa! I was not shooting. Yeah, I almost missed my man. Breaking neck. I got 2 words for you. I've heard a lot about you guys. Let's go. Excuse my language. Getting over the shot. Plenty of no. Into the many.
No nerves.
That was great. It's gonna be cool. Woo! What it's all about. The purest point of view. The living legend. Champion. Arrogant.
You're listening to me.
Instead of statement, I'm talking to you. Charisma.
So gladly without you.
In the land of extreme.
Testify. Nevermore. Interactive interview. I'm not just the best. Interactive interview with a plastic
You
head.
earned the right.
Nobody. You better keep listening. Thank you very much. Controversy creates chaos. Professional wrestling.
Made in the USA, baby.
Memphis wrestling. The guy on fire. I'm not
We were sexy.
What a show.
One and only.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Wrestling
Epicenter. Interactive interview. We took care of the business. This isn't ballet. We are huge with this whole. You're where it's at. You gotta recognize who's the best. Make sure to tune in each and every week. I'll come out of your computer. Knock down your door and turn it on for you. Or else I'm gonna kick your stinking teeth in. And that's the bottom line.
Have a nice day.
It's showtime!
Don't forget to like and subscribe.